Ladies and gentlemen, there's never been a time when change wasn't happening. But there have been many times when people were unprepared for it. Not because they weren't smart enough or skilled enough, but because they weren't grounded enough. We are living in a world that shifts faster than we can predict. Plans change. Markets crash. Relationships evolve. Expectations rise and fall. In all this chaos, it becomes easy, almost automatic, to grow anxious, to become negative, to give up on believing in what's possible. But some people don't lose their spark. They walk into uncertainty with clear eyes and open hearts. They don't collapse under change. They adapt. They evolve. And most importantly, they stay optimistic. Today is about learning what they do differently. Because optimism isn't magic. It's not about pretending life is perfect. It's about knowing that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward, and you have the power to find it. Optimism is often misunderstood. People confuse it with blind hope or unrealistic positivity. But real optimism isn't a denial of difficulty. It's not ignoring what's broken. It's seeing what's broken and believing that healing is still possible. It's understanding the reality of the storm while trusting that the sun will return. And that's not a feeling. That's a decision. There's something powerful about someone who, in the middle of uncertainty, says, "We'll find a way." That confidence doesn't come from knowing everything will work out. It comes from knowing they'll keep working no matter what. That's the foundation of optimism. Not ease, but effort. Not comfort, but courage. It's not something you stumble into. It's something you train for, to wake up every day and choose hope, despite the noise, despite the fear, despite the pressure. Takes more strength than simply giving in to frustration. It requires mental discipline. It means learning to quiet the part of your brain that searches for what's wrong and teaching it to also notice what's right. Not to ignore one, but to balance both. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And energy is the currency of resilience. The brain is naturally wired to spot danger. That's what helped our ancestors survive. But survival is not the same as growth. To grow, we need to intentionally train our minds to not just react, but to reflect. To not just identify problems, but to envision solutions. This mental habit is what turns fear into focus and frustration into fuel. Discipline doesn't mean you force yourself to be happy. It means you guide your thoughts when they want to wander into fear. It means you pause when your emotions want to spiral. It means you take ownership of your mindset, just like you would your health or your finances. You don't leave it to chance. You work on it. People think optimism is soft. It's not. It's sharp. It cuts through the noise. It clears the fog. It keeps teams going when projects fall apart. It helps leaders stay grounded when decisions carry weight. It builds resilience in children who face uncertainty. It sustains marriages, careers, and communities. Optimism doesn't whisper, "Everything is fine." It declares, "Even if it's not fine, I won't quit." Optimism is a lens. The way you look at the world determines how you move through it. Two people can face the same setback and experience two different lives. One sees an ending. The other sees a beginning. One stops trying. The other starts learning. Same event. Different lens. That difference isn't luck. It's mental conditioning. What many people don't realize is that optimism grows strongest in challenge, in the absence of pain, but in the presence of it. Optimism becomes necessary when the plan doesn't work, when the call doesn't come, when the answer is no. It is in these moments that hope is not just helpful, it's essential, because it's the bridge between failure and the next attempt. That bridge is built with belief. Not belief in perfection, but belief in persistence. Not belief that nothing will go wrong, but belief that you'll keep going even when it does. That mindset makes space for creativity, for solutions, for patience. And it inspires the people around you to try again too. Change is inevitable. It's the one thing we can count on, and yet, it's the one thing so many fight. The irony is, the more we resist change, the more exhausted we become, because it keeps happening. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for us to feel ready. It moves forward, with or without our approval. The problem isn't that the world changes. It's that we don't always know how to change with it. And instead of adapting, we dig in. We defend old ways. We try to slow things down. But that only creates more tension. The real power comes when we lean into change, not blindly, but bravely. When we ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" Change forces us to face the unfamiliar. It disrupts our patterns. It challenges our comfort zones. And that's exactly where growth happens. Without change, we'd never stretch. We'd never evolve. We'd never uncover what else we're capable of. The people who thrive during change are not the ones with all the answers. They're the ones who stay curious, who ask better questions, who don't see disruption as destruction, but as direction. Every ending carries within it the seed of a new beginning. The question is whether we're too busy mourning what was to nurture what could be. Change removes what's no longer needed. It exposes weakness, but it also reveals opportunity. The faster we stop resisting it, the sooner we start growing from it. Optimism and adaptability go hand in hand. You can't stay hopeful if you're unwilling to shift, and you won't stay resilient if you treat change like a threat instead of a teacher. The strongest minds are not the most rigid. They're the most flexible. They adjust without losing who they are. They adapt without abandoning their values. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning to welcome change, even when it's uncomfortable. Because with every change comes a chance to rebuild smarter, to think deeper, to connect more intentionally, to ask yourself, what am I clinging to that no longer serves me? And what am I avoiding that might just elevate me? You begin to understand that life isn't meant to stay the same. Stillness in nature is often followed by movement. That seasons change for a reason. That nothing alive stays stagnant for long. And if we're alive, truly alive, we must be willing to shift too. Optimism in an ever-changing world isn't about escaping reality. It's about shaping it. It's about stepping into uncertainty and choosing to believe that growth is still possible. That light still exists. That progress is never out of reach. It's about building the mental muscle to rise when it's easier to fall. This kind of optimism doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It's steady. It's clear. It leads without needing applause. It fuels you on the days when answers are scarce and outcomes uncertain. It reminds you that life is not a straight line, and that every detour has its own hidden wisdom. Once you start living with that kind of mindset, the world stops feeling like something you need to protect yourself from. It starts becoming something you can participate in, fully, confidently, and courageously. In a world overwhelmed by constant noise and shifting expectations, solitude often feels like a luxury or even a weakness. But it is, in fact, a necessity. Solitude is not about being alone. It's about returning to yourself. It's the space where you hear what the world tries to drown out. In silence, you don't escape life, you understand it. Most people fear being alone because silence forces reflection, and reflection reveals truth. It shows us what we're avoiding, what we've ignored, and what we've outgrown. The truth can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is where all growth begins. Without time alone, the noise of the world becomes our identity. We start chasing what others define as success. We start reacting to what others say is urgent. We live on someone else's rhythm. But solitude creates space between stimulus and response. It is in that space that we reclaim ownership of our thoughts. When everything outside feels chaotic, grounds us in clarity. It's the mental stillness that allows us to process emotion, align with purpose, and build resilience. Without it, we become reactive. With it, we become intentional. It's in solitude that vision is shaped. Ideas mature, pain is processed, values are remembered, and optimism is built. Because when you take the time to reflect, you're no longer just moving, you're choosing. You're no longer driven by pressure. You're guided by purpose. That subtle shift is the foundation of sustainable hope. Solitude doesn't mean isolation. It means intentional disconnection to reconnect with what truly matters. It's the pause that protects perspective. It teaches us that we don't have to chase noise to feel alive. That stillness is not stagnation. It's calibration. It's where we prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally to show up as our best in a world that keeps shifting. Optimism that lasts doesn't come from hype or distraction. It comes from alignment. And alignment is found in stillness. In the moments where no one is watching and no one is clapping. In those quiet spaces, we ask ourselves hard questions. Who am I becoming? Why am I doing this? What matters to me now that didn't before? The answers change as we grow. That's the point. We're meant to evolve. But if we don't pause to notice, we'll live by outdated goals and expired values. Solitude gives us a regular check in with our inner world. It's the rehearsal room where we strengthen emotional awareness and re-center our compass. When we build a habit of solitude, we become less influenced by panic and more rooted in presence. And people feel that. They notice when someone is unshaken in chaos. That calm is magnetic. It's not arrogance. It's clarity. The kind of clarity that can't be faked, because it's built behind the scenes. It's developed in the quiet. But solitude alone isn't enough. What fuels it? What gives it direction? Is purpose. Without purpose, even silence becomes noise. But when you're clear on your why, every experience, good or bad, has meaning. And that meaning becomes the foundation of your optimism. Purpose is the anchor that holds during life's storms. When everything is shifting, when the ground feels unstable, when success feels far away, purpose keeps you centered. It's what makes the hard days worth enduring and the quiet work worth repeating. It's not always loud or glamorous. Sometimes it's simple, often it's personal, but it always gives direction. People who stay hopeful in hard times don't rely on outcomes. They rely on meaning. Their energy doesn't come from praise or progress. It comes from connection to something bigger than themselves. That's why setbacks don't stop them. Their motivation isn't conditional. It's deeply rooted. A clear purpose also builds endurance. It teaches us that progress is often invisible at first, that we don't always get results right away. But just because it isn't visible doesn't mean it's not valuable. Purpose helps us delay gratification without losing momentum. It reminds us that the path may be long, but it's still worth it. And when life gets hard, and it will, purpose doesn't erase the pain, but it transforms it. It gives it context. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? That single shift rewires how you experience change. You stop resisting it. You start learning from it. Purpose isn't something you find once. It's something you uncover over and over again. As you grow, your understanding deepens. As you reflect, your clarity sharpens. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily return. A quiet reminder that your life means more than your circumstances. That your value isn't in your results, but in your integrity. That your contribution matters, even when it's unnoticed. And optimism, when rooted in purpose, becomes stronger than any mood or season. It becomes a posture, a way of showing up in the world. It's not fragile because it doesn't depend on what happens. It's built on what you stand for. When that foundation is strong, everything else becomes easier to manage. In a world obsessed with speed and results, purpose brings patience. It teaches you to focus on the process, not just the prize. And that kind of focus protects you from burnout. Because you're not just running, you're running for a reason. That reason gives you power. And with that power, you lead differently. You speak differently. You live differently. When you combine solitude and purpose, something remarkable happens. You stop being reactive. You become intentional. You don't just survive change, you use it. You don't just wait for peace, you create it. You don't just hope for better, you build it. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more grounded minds. Minds that can pause without panicking. Minds that can adapt without losing clarity. Minds that can lead from purpose instead of pressure. This is how optimism becomes sustainable. Not through motivational slogans, but through personal discipline, quiet alignment, and meaningful direction. It's easy to lose hope when everything feels out of control. The world moves fast, decisions are made without warning, and what worked yesterday doesn't guarantee anything tomorrow. In these moments, many feel overwhelmed, not because the situation is impossible, but because they focus on everything they can't influence. It's the illusion of control that wears people down. They spend all their energy reacting to headlines, chasing approval, or worrying about outcomes that lie beyond their reach. But optimism doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from controlling your response to it. Resilient people don't waste time trying to fix what isn't theirs to fix. They focus on what's within their grasp. They ask better questions. What can I do right now? What small decision is mine to make today? What action reflects my values in this moment? This shift from control to responsibility is powerful. Control demands results. Responsibility invites alignment. Control clings to certainty. Responsibility adapts to change. When you take responsibility for your mindset, your behavior, your attitude, you no longer feel powerless. You become an agent of movement, not a victim of momentum. Even when circumstances don't shift immediately, there's a kind of quiet confidence that grows inside someone who stays focused on their circle of influence. They begin to notice what others ignore. They practice gratitude in chaos. They listen more and panic less, and people feel that. It's grounding. That energy spreads. When someone stays steady in the storm, it doesn't mean they're unaffected. It means they've trained their perspective. That training doesn't happen by accident. It comes from building small habits, checking in with your thoughts, challenging your assumptions, asking whether the story you're telling yourself is actually true. Most anxiety isn't created by events, it's created by interpretation. And interpretation is something we can influence, but only if we pause long enough to catch it. When life gets unpredictable, clarity comes from focus. Not on everything, just on the next step. The brain handles complexity better when it's given simplicity. One task, one decision, one act of courage. That's how movement begins. Not in leaps, but in alignment. That's how hope grows too. Not by solving everything, but by doing something. Action is the birthplace of confidence. And this is where optimism becomes real. It's not a vague emotion, it's a practiced mindset. It's choosing to give energy to what matters most and letting go of what drains you, not out of ignorance, but out of intelligence. Because the cost of distraction is high and the reward of clarity is freedom. When people speak of optimistic minds, they often imagine cheerful, smiley personalities who float above difficulty. True optimism is much tougher than that. It's not surface-level positivity, it's deep inner resilience. The most hopeful minds are also the most trained. They've walked through disappointment and decided not to be defined by it. They've lost and gotten up, not because they had to, but because something inside them still believed in forward. That belief is not a personality trait. It's a choice that becomes a habit. And like all habits, it's developed through repetition. You train your mind the same way you train your body, intentionally, consistently with discipline. You catch yourself when you start spiraling. You step back when your emotions flare. You breathe. You act. You repeat. You begin to talk to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend, with clarity, with compassion, with challenge. You stop rehearsing fear and start rehearsing possibility. You don't wait for things to feel easy. You show up while they're still messy, and over time, that practice becomes muscle, mental muscle, emotional muscle, resilience that doesn't disappear when tested. The most optimistic people aren't those who have the fewest struggles. They're the ones who've developed the deepest perspective. They know how to sit with uncertainty without crumbling. They know how to extract learning from failure. They know how to ask for help without shame and offer support without needing recognition. That quiet strength becomes their default, not because life is easy, but because they've trained their response to it. And when you train your mind in this way, the world stops feeling like something that's happening to you. It starts becoming something you're co-creating. You stop waiting for motivation. You start creating it. You stop hoping someone else brings peace. You start practicing it yourself. This mindset is not about being in control. It's about being in alignment. Optimism, at its core, is about agency. It's about believing that what you do next still matters, that you're not finished, that this moment is not the end of the story. When that belief is real, not forced, borrowed, but earned, it changes how you think, how you speak, how you lead. You don't walk into rooms looking for permission. You bring perspective. You bring calm. You bring clarity. The world doesn't need more reactive minds. It needs trained minds. Minds that have practiced pausing before panicking. Minds that stay open instead of defensive. Minds that don't just consume information but digest it with discernment. This kind of training doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in challenge. And the more we commit to that process, the more we find that optimism isn't the absence of struggle. It's the confidence that we are equipped to meet it. We often look at strong people and wonder what makes them different. Why they stay so grounded when others unravel. Why they speak with so much clarity in confusion. Why their presence brings stability. It's not magic. It's not mystery. It's training, not in perfection, but in practice. Not in knowing all the answers, but in asking the right questions. And it starts small. One breath, one boundary, one pause. One moment of courage to say, fix the world, but I can choose how I show up in it. That single choice, repeated over time, builds the kind of mind that doesn't just survive change, but leads through it.